Majesty, worship in majesty, unto Jesus be all glory, power, and praise. Majesty, kingdom, authority, for from his throne unto his throne is ever reign. So exalt, lift up high the name of Jesus. Magnify, come glorify Christ Jesus the King. Majesty, worship his majesty. Jesus who died, now glorified, King of all kings. Jesus who dies, now glorified, King of all kings. Lord, you are more precious than silver. Lord, you are more costly than gold. Lord, you are more beautiful than diamonds, and nothing I desire compares with you. Lord, you are more precious than silver. Lord, you are more costly than gold. Lord, you are more beautiful than diamonds, and nothing I desire compares with you, and nothing I desire compares with you. Lord, I want to love you more than I ever did before. You're so easy to adore. Lord, I want to love you more. Lord, I want to love you more than I ever have before. You are so easy to adore. Lord, I want to love you more. Oh Lord, you're beautiful. Your face is all I see, and when your eyes are on this child, your grace abounds to me. Oh Lord, you're beautiful. Your face is all I wash it away. Look, there is flowing a crimson tide, whiter than snow you may be today. Grace, grace, God's grace, grace that will pardon and cleanse within. Grace, grace, God's grace, grace that is greater than all our sin. Marvelous, infinite, matchless grace, freely bestowed on all who believe. You that are longing to see His face, will you this moment His grace receive? Grace, grace, God's grace, grace that will pardon and cleanse within. Grace, grace, God's grace, grace that is greater than all our sin. Grace, grace, God's grace, grace that will pardon and cleanse within. Grace, grace, God's grace, grace that is greater than all our sin. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercy never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore I will hope in Him. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore I will hope in Him. Therefore I will hope in Him.
You know, we all grew up hearing proverbs or aphorisms, those short little clever sayings that have great moral content, but also have a little bite to them. Let's see if you can help me with some of them. Now this one I heard, maybe it's just a Tom Cruise saying, if you want something done right, do it yourself. Okay. A penny saved is a penny earned. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. Actions speak louder than words. All good things must come. Beggars can't be choosers. A watch pot. A picture is worth. How about that? Do you realize how much those things are built into us? We're so used to those. They have become a part of our internal ethic. Now, King Solomon collected a whole book of these kind of things. And in his quest for knowledge. And really, the book of Proverbs is a collection of collections. Many of them are individual proverbs that Solomon collected. And I wouldn't be surprised if this man wrote some of them himself, coined some himself. But most of them are collected. And 2 chapters are collections. Chapter 30, that we're going to spend a little time on, is from Agur ben Yaakov, the son of Yaakov. And chapter 31 are the sayings of King Lemuel. Solomon was an amazing guy. He was a ruler, the king of Israel. He was a scientist. He was an engineer. He was an architect. He was a civil planner. And he was also the richest man who ever lived. And as God says, whoever would live. We'll see about that in just a moment. He was also a teacher. And he wanted to pass on cultural values that would stay with his people and would help shape their lives. And so that's where the book of Proverbs came from. Part of this collection from Agur Ben Yaka is wisdom about money. Let me show you these verses. 2 things I ask of you, O Lord. Do not refuse me before I die. Keep falsehood and lies far from me. Give me neither poverty nor riches, but give me only my daily bread. Otherwise I may have too much and disown you and say, who is the Lord? Or I may become poor and steal, and so dishonor the name of my God. When God offered to give Solomon anything he wanted, he simply asked for wisdom and knowledge so that he could do a good job of leading his people. And you know what? He showed that he already had quite a bit of wisdom to ask for that. You know, they say that the wisest person is the one who knows what they don't know. Unfortunately, most of us are the opposite. We don't know what we don't know, so therefore we think we know everything. But here's what God said to Solomon. Since this is your heart's desire, and you have not asked for wealth, riches, or honor, nor for the death of your enemies, and since you have not asked for a long life, but for wisdom and knowledge to govern my people over whom I have made you king, therefore wisdom and knowledge will be given you. And I will also give you wealth, riches, and honor, such as no king who was before you ever had, and none after you will have. Now, Solomon, as a result of that, became not a millionaire, not a billionaire, but a trillionaire. There are no trillionaires alive on this planet. Solomon is the only trillionaire that has ever lived. 2 Chronicles chapter 9 says that Solomon received 25 tons of gold a year, and that was for 40 years. And that doesn't count. By the way, that adds up to $2.1 trillion by today's values. And that's only the beginning, because that does not count the revenue from merchants and traders. So at least his assets were $2.1 trillion. And he didn't ask for it. In fact, Solomon was so rich, and as a result, Jerusalem was so wealthy, that 2 Chronicles 9:27 says, the king made silver as common in Jerusalem as stones, and cedar as plentiful as sycamore fig trees in the foothills. Now the problem with that is it probably devalues silver. Because you know how precious metals and jewels gain their value. It's because they are beautiful, but more than that, they are rare. And so if there were diamonds, like the stones down on the shore of Lake Erie, diamonds would not be worth much. They would still be beautiful, but they'd just be beach glass. But since they are rare, hard to find, and especially the good ones are, they're very valuable. And on top of that, the diamond industry does a good job at controlling the flow of diamonds to keep the value up. It's kind of like Chevrolet does with Corvettes. They only make a limited number to keep the value high. So, Solomon ruled literally over the golden age of Israel. And he understood economics and human nature. In fact, notice some of these proverbs. I just want to quickly mention some to you, and they may come up in the next few weeks. First of all, he says, he who loves pleasure will become poor. Whoever loves wine and oil will never be rich. He says, the rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. Think about that one before you sign the line. He also had a grasp of what is most important about eternal values. And he said, rich and poor have this in common. The Lord is the maker of them all. And better a poor man whose walk is blameless than a rich man whose ways are perverse. Yeah, go back to you. Thanks, Jared. So, these are the wise sayings that a trillionaire decided to publish. And the one that we looked at from Proverbs 30 is from that collection that Solomon said, this is what I want my people to know. I want them to hear generation upon generation this kind of wisdom. So, two things. First of all, keep falsehood and lies far from me. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Deception, half-truth, misrepresentation make healthy relationships impossible. And so this proverb calls us to seek integrity, to be the kind of person whose word can be trusted, who does not have ulterior motives, who does not manipulate the circumstances or manipulate people. I think that's what Paul is talking about in Ephesians chapter 4 when he says, you were taught with regard to your former way of life, and by the way, he's talking to former pagans, to put off your old self, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires, to be made new in the attitude of your hearts, and to put on the new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. And then he says, therefore, each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to his neighbor, for we are all members of one body. There is no way that a church family can have integrity, can have trust, and the kind of friendships that can help us grow, unless we can trust that, number one, what we say to each other is kept in confidence. And number two, that what we say to each other is true and not a deception. The world is full of deception. Marketing is full of deception. It only tells part of the truth. It only tells the truth that is beneficial to the seller. I guess that's why I've always had difficulty selling cars. You know, I've heard all the stories about, you know, putting oatmeal in your radiator to plug it up until you sell it. Or if you got a noisy transmission, you sell bananas in the transmission, and it'll quiet it down for a while. But I've always felt the compulsion, kind of like that movie, Liar, Liar, you know, that he was compelled to tell the truth. I always feel the compulsion to say, here's what's right with it, here's what's wrong with it. I recently sold our Volkswagen Cabriolet, not Cabriolet, but the Jetta wagon, that silver one. It was getting kind of rough around the corners, and it was getting old. It was time to get rid of it. And so I put it on one of those Facebook, you know, buy, sell, trade things. $300. I knew it wasn't worth more than that. It was worth it to me to sell for $300. And I said to the first offer, and so somebody immediately says, all right. And I say, okay, it's yours. And then after that, there were about 40 posts. I'll give you more. I'll give you 500. I'll give you 600. Man, I was getting richer by the moment. But I had to go back up and said, no, the first guy gets it. When he came to pick it up, he said, thank you so much for selling it to me to the price you said you would. And I said, what else can I do? That's what I said I would do. He said, that's not what everybody does. And I know I'm talking to people who would do the same exact thing. Here's the thing. Let's say I had taken advantage of that opportunity and I got $600 from that car. Number one, I knew it had problems and I listed all the problems to him. I showed him what I had done to him. And I gave him all the facts about it. I said, you still want to buy? Yeah, I want it. Okay. So what if I had made $300 more dollars than I thought I could from it? That would still be on my conscience. The 300 by now would mean nothing. I would have already wasted it. I probably would have gone out about $300 worth of, I don't know, candy or something. But here, it would still be. Laying down and asleep, I'd be thinking about that. Man, I should have taken that guy's money. I promised to the first guy. So he said, take falsehood and lies from me. This sounds very much like the Lord's Prayer that we're used to hearing, where he says, lead me not into temptation. That's what he's saying. In fact, now we know what the Lord's Prayer means. It means, lead me away from temptation. It's not like God would lead us into temptation. He's saying, lead me away from temptation. As this writer says, deliver me from lies. And then he says, give me neither poverty nor riches. Wow. But give me only my daily bread. Once again, does this sound familiar? Jesus was familiar with this when he was teaching in the Sermon on the Mount. Give us this day our daily bread. Our provision comes from God. Do you realize that every stitch of clothing that you own is ultimately from God? Every morsel that you eat comes from God. In fact, you don't even have to be told to offer a blessing at a meal. If you remember those things, that it comes from God. That the very seed that's planted was made by God. That the sun that shines on it and the rain that falls on it is from God. That the corn seed that grows as a result of it is from God. Or the wheat seed that comes from it is from God. That the wheat that's harvested was ultimately made by God. Yes, the labor of the farmers was involved in it, but without God's provision, it never would have happened in the first place. And so therefore, that loaf of bread that you eat, you buy, and that slice of bread that you eat is from God. And doesn't he deserve to be thanked for that? I am constantly amazed at how God has taken care of me. Somebody asked me a strange question the other day. Do you like squash? It was strange this way, because I thought she was going to give me some squash, but I said, she doesn't have any squash. What's this questions about? Right now, squash is getting ripe, and everybody's carrying bags of squash around to give away. Well, no, just at church. But no, she was talking about a fellow, because I was doing a memorial service yesterday down at the lakefront. And she was talking about this fellow and how much he loved squash. And that's what she wanted to tell me. She said, she started by saying, do you like squash? And she's from Alabama. And so she'd fix it by, breading it in cornmeal. And that's the way he loved it. He didn't like it cooked any other way. He loved it the way she fixed it. And my mind immediately went back to the almost 4 years that we lived in Alabama when I went to college down there. With your encouragement and help and support, and the support of the Tuscumbia Church of Christ. And one time, we lived for a week on squash. We'd grown some squash in our garden, and that's all we had. Now, it's not exactly what we wanted, but we survived on it, and it filled our bellies. And we were too proud to ask for any more help. And we got through that week, and there was a little bit more money than we paid. And so we were fine. And God provided that squash. No, I've not always had everything I wanted. I've always had everything I've needed. I've had way more than I've needed. God is good. Because the writer goes on and says this, and here's where the real wisdom comes in. He says, otherwise, I may have too much and disown you and say, who is the Lord? Ooh, happens. Or I may become poor and steal, and so dishonor the name of my God. How much money is too much? Some say you can't be too rich, but this says you can. When you are tempted to disown God, when you are tempted to think that I've got everything I need now, I'm satisfied, I've got everything under control, that's when it's too much. Jesus had an encounter with a young man. You know about this guy. He ran up to Jesus and he said, what good thing can I do to inherit eternal life? Sincere young man, I think he was sincere with that question. You know the answer Jesus said? You keep the commandments, you learn them. And the guy said, I learned those from childhood, I've been keeping those. And then Jesus said, one thing you lack. Go sell all that you have and give to the poor. And this is the statement in Matthew 19:22. When the young man heard this, he went away sad because he had great wealth. That young man was too rich, wasn't he? He had everything he needed and more, but he had enough that he had learned to depend upon it and to worship it. It was his crutch. It was his rock. It was the way he knew that he could get through the future. Not because he knew that God was on his side, or that his Father in heaven loved him and would provide for him whatever happened. No. It's because he knew what he had accomplished, and he was rich. And it was in that context that Jesus said, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. And we've debated that upside and down, trying to figure out what that meant. I think it just means what it says. He is picturing something absurd, trying to thread a needle with a camel. Can you imagine that? And it's that impossible. And really, Jesus' point was not, it's those who got extra money that can't get to heaven. It cannot be done on human effort. What is impossible with man is possible with God, he finally says. That's the point. And so, it's a healthy place to be to say, it's impossible for me to face the future without God. And this young man, without knowing him, became a part of that proverb. Paul bears down on this one, and I want you to notice the context in which he puts greed. He says to the Colossians, once again, because they're a pagan background, and they're tempted to slip back into it, he says, put to death, therefore, whatever belongs to your earthly nature, sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires, and greed, which is idolatry. This points out Western culture is in crisis. As Christianity fades, the state has to take its place. Sometimes Christianity has faded because the state has taken its place. When I say state, I'm not talking about Ohio or Pennsylvania. I'm talking about the government, the state, the rulers. Because when greed is no longer regulated by an internal Christian ethic that comes from a relationship with God, then outside controls have to be put on it. And as a result, good luck getting a mortgage anymore. Or a car loan. It used to be to get a car loan, we could call our credit union and says, we found a used car we want to buy. How much do you need? We need $4,000. Come on in and pick it up. Now, you have to get a colonoscopy in order to get a loan. Now, local bankers tell me, from these small local banks like Andover Bank and Conneaut Savings Bank, the ones that did not cause the big bank crisis a few years ago, but all those regulations that were put on those big banks who were too big to fail are put on the small banks too. And the FDIC fees have been raised for the small banks just like they were for the big banks. And so what has happened is the small innocent banks have to pay for what the big banks did. And why was that all caused? Because there was no internal ethic to control greed. And so they made loans and got money from people who could not afford to pay those loans. And in some cases, people got loans and they were greedy because they said, oh, good man. I didn't think I could even qualify for a loan. How many got pay for that loan? Worried about paying it off in the future. And then they couldn't. And foreclosures and crisis and despair. So, and greed shows up in a lot of different ways. It can show up for things that we've had to make laws about, the banking laws, the insider trading regulations. If I work for a company and I know that something's going to happen to the company to make the stock worth a lot more, I gobble up a bunch of stock. Because I have unfair advantage. Or I know that a crisis is coming, so I sell all my stock in my company. So I escape it and let the other shareholders suffer from it. There are laws about that. Why? Because of greed. And even things like stingy wages and benefits for employees can be the result of greed. I read something the other day that it's possible that Amazon.com is what's holding back wage increase. Amazon has gotten so huge, they have built these regional warehouses now, and they are employing so many people that the wages they set are controlling the wage market. I'm not sure if that's the whole story or not, but it's part of it. You see, competition among businesses and competition among wages is good for the worker as well as for the producer. Anyways, enough talking about economics. Because greed shows up in our personal lives. I talked about the car selling venture. But we operate from a different headquarters. I mean, the thing about raising prices during a national disaster to try to zing people, selling water for $5 a bottle when there's a pure water crisis. Taking advantage of someone who is ignorant about the true value of their antique and getting it for a song and selling it for 10 times more. That's a result of greed. responsible for those things. We're responsible to let something else control us. Now, economic discipline and planning are not the same thing as greed. I mean, the idea of saving and avoiding loans and being frugal, those are virtues. And those are taught in the Bible as well. And so is generosity. In fact, to a great extent, generosity is an antidote to greed. The Apostle Paul gave up a lucrative career. Not only was he, like most Jews, trained in a practical, hands-on skill that he could always fall back on. His was tent making. But he was also a brilliant Jewish scholar, one of the finest of his age, and maybe the best trained. Besides that, he had credibility with the Jewish ruling council and had been assigned by them, and probably well paid by them, to go root out Christian leaders and imprison them. And he gave all that up for Christ. He said, I consider that as manure compared to the surpassing value of knowing Christ as Lord. And so his income went from here to there. His income went from healthy, in a healthy retirement plan, it went to having to rely on handouts. Or to go into an area like Corinth, and instead of setting himself up for criticism later on, he just said, I won't accept your support, I'll just make tents and support myself. But here he is in jail, and they didn't have the kind of care for inmates that we have now. And so if you had food, it was brought to you by friends. If you had a blanket or warm clothing, it was brought by friends. And so he reflects on that in Philippians chapter 4. Here's what he says. For even when I was in Thessalonica, you sent me aid again and again when I was in need. Not that I'm looking for a gift, but I am looking for what may be credited to your account. I have received full payments and even more. I am amply supplied now that I have received from Epaphroditus the gifts you sent. They are a fragrant offering, an acceptable sacrifice, pleasing to God. And I want you to notice this part in particular. And my God will meet all your needs according to his glorious riches in Christ Jesus. Now he's tying that in. He's saying, because you cooperated with God and used your resources to help the kingdom, God will supply all of your needs. Now this is not some magical thing. And it's definitely not a promise that you'll get rich if you give more. I know there have been some televangelists that have promised that. I've thought about using that technique, but no, I haven't. It just shows that people are easily duped, though, doesn't it? You know, I was going to put out a GoFundMe page for a Learjet, you know, because I think I need a $72,000 jet to be able to get around easily. No, what he's saying is that God will bless you if you obey him. That's the way it works. And only God knows all the wonderful ways that that comes together. I know some ways it makes you look at your finances in a totally different light. And it makes you see them as a responsibility. This is a gift from God. How am I supposed to use this? And when you do that, suddenly, you're not as frivolous. Not to say that you can't do things and have things that you enjoy. In fact, he talks about that in Scripture. But suddenly, you're more responsible. You know, I saw a great presentation one time by a former congressman. And he was giving a little primer on economics, and he talked about how you're going to go to the store to buy maybe a tent. And so you go to the store and you're looking for two things. You're looking for price and quality, right? And so you find what you believe is the best balance between price and quantity. It may not be the absolute most expensive one they've got, but you can see it's something that's durable and it's going to meet your needs. And it may not be the cheapest one, but it has value, so you're looking for value, so you buy that one. Okay, that versus you ask somebody to go buy a tent for your company, and you give them money to go buy the tent. And so they go in, it's not their money. And so what do they look for? Well, value is one consideration, but is price a big consideration? Probably not. Especially if your boss has just handed you the credit card. You go buy a good tent, you're thinking, oh man, I've got to buy a really good one here. So you end up paying more for a tent that does the same thing. How about if you take it and you insulate it from the boss handing you the card? What you end up having there is government spending. You have unnamed bureaucrats spending money that is not their money on things that don't directly benefit them. So they don't care if there's value in it, and they don't care how much it costs. But what I'm suggesting is that when we start seeing our finances as from God and for His kingdom, then suddenly it brings a new dignity to it, a new responsibility. And God uses that, but He also does some amazing, miraculous things in the process as well. And there are many people here who can testify to that fact. So, don't make me rich, He says, but also don't make me poor. Poverty is not the solution to greed. In fact, He says, here's the danger in poverty. Give me either poverty or I may become poor and steal and so dishonor the name of my God. See, poverty is either a virtue or a curse. It can come by illness, injury, natural disaster, war. It can come by choice, in fact. It can result from bad personal choices, or it can result from sin that's directed against you, and you're the innocent victim in it. And by the way, I mentioned all those causes of poverty, so therefore, we need to be careful about judging poverty and about jumping to conclusions about it. Every human being is made in the image of God and deserves our love, also our respect, as much as we can. We don't have to respect their wrong behavior. We don't have to respect that. But we can respect them as a person and ought to. Poverty can be the consequence of sin. I saw it up close this week. I can't get this guy out of my mind. His name is Adam. Pray for Adam. He's been in prison 4 years, just got out 2 weeks ago. It was a drug charge, he said, I have the clothes I'm wearing. I lost my car. I lost my house. I lost my wife. I lost my children. He came out with nothing. Nothing. My heart goes out to him. You know, on the one hand, he did the crime, he paid the time. Thankfully, while he was in there, he also got counsel, he went to AA groups. Praise God. He's ready for a fresh start in life. I'm going to do whatever I can to help that process take place. And I hope he can get back on his feet. I want to see success here. You know, he's got a lot of strikes against him. But this proverb points out that the danger of poverty is sometimes it can make somebody feel so desperate that they feel compelled to steal, and as a result, they dishonor the name of God. So, the lesson from this proverb is strive for balance in your life. Live within your means. Keep a safe margin between what comes in and what goes out. Honor God with your finances. Pay your debts. Be ethical in all your dealings. Don't try to get a quick buck. Welcome. Good morning. And don't let temporary things dominate your life. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you. Let me go through those again. Balance in your life. Live within your means. Keep a safe margin. That word margin is important. And I've not always lived by this. Burning the candle at both ends, spinning right to the edge. And then if something goes wrong with the car, it's off the edge. And that's one thing I've learned. I've had enough of those times. Enough. Keep margin. Honor God with your finances, and that means pay your debts, be ethical in all your dealings, and all your dealings. Keep your conscience clear about all your dealings. I mean, if you put $1 in the pop machine and you get 2 bottles, go into the store and say, this one's not mine. Now, look at the deal I got. Don't try to get a quick buck. And part of what that says is, if you want to play the lottery for fun, fine. If you think you're going to make money on it, you're already in trouble. If you're playing the lottery trying to get rich, then you've already bought the lie. Why do you think the Ohio lottery makes a huge deal when someone wins millions of dollars? Because millions of people want nothing. And they want everybody to think that everybody can win like the big winners do. Honestly, I was against the Ohio lottery even starting. It looked to me like it was a tax on the poor, and from what I see, it is exactly what it's turned out to be. Because frankly, people who have learned how to invest their money in the long term and be patient as the miracle of compound interest takes place and builds their funds, they don't tend to play the lottery. They also then don't tend to put money in that one-armed bandit. I can't give you scripture and verse saying that it's wrong for you to play a game. I'm not going to try to do that. I'm just going to say, factor these things in. You want a better bet? Put an extra $1 in the collection plate. When you open the door at home, pennies are going to pile out of the door on top of it. Anyways, enough railing about that. Let me close with a statement from the Apostle Paul. Once again, he's still sitting in jail when he's reading this, when he's writing this. And he's been through just about everything. They've tried to kill him. They've tried to discredit him. They've tried to scar him. God's taken care of him through all these things. And here's what he says. He says, I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do everything through Him who gives me strength. That is a goal, to work toward that attitude of life, isn't it? I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation. Peace and contentment when things go great, and peace and contentment when things don't. Knowing that I'm not alone, that the one who controls it all is on my side. And so even though it doesn't look so hot right now, this is only a tiny little snapshot of my life.
Take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, to Thee. Take my moments and my days, let them flow in ceaseless praise. Take my hands and let them move at the impulse of my love. Take my feet and let them be swift and beautiful for Thee. Take my voice and let me sing, always holy for my King. Take my lips and let them be filled with messages from Thee. Take my silver and my gold, not of mine would I withhold. Take my intellect and use every part